My name is Naomi. I am 58 years old, and for the past 23 years, the 4th of July has meant one thing: my daughter Claire's laughter in my backyard. I hosted, I cooked, I decorated. This year was different. Claire and David bought their first house. She insisted on hosting. "You deserve a break, Mom." I was so proud. I spent days making my famous macaroni salad, my father's recipe. I bought sparklers. I wrapped a gift, new table linens for her new dining room. I drove over my Heartlight, picturing her smile. The street was packed with cars. Music floated from the house. I walked up balancing the salad bowls and the gift. Claire opened the door. Her face froze. "Mom, what are you doing here?" My smile faltered. "You invited me, sweetheart. For the 4th. She glanced behind her, her voice dropping to a cold whisper. "There's been a misunderstanding. My mother-in-law, Lorraine, is here." David thought. "We agreed it would be just his family this year." The words were a physical blow. I looked at the bowls in my hands. I swallowed the pain hard. "I see. Well, I hope you all have a lovely time." I turned and walked back to my car. The door closed softly behind me. Before I tell you what happened next, a morning that changed everything, I am curious. Where are you joining me from today? If a moment like this has ever left you speechless with hurt, please tap that like button. It tells me you understand. And if you want to hear how this quiet walk to the car was just the beginning, subscribe and stay right here. This story has only just started. The drive home was a blur of bright, cheerful colors that felt like a mockery. American flags waved from porches. The smell of barbecue hung in the warm air. I rolled up my windows to shut it all out. I didn't cry. I just felt numb, a hollowed-out shell where my happy anticipation had been. I stopped at the park overlooking the river, a place Claire and I used to go. I sat on a bench and watched other families, clusters of generations laughing together. A little girl with blonde pigtails like Claire used to have chased a dog. The ache in my chest sharpened into something acute and awful. My house was too quiet when I returned. The silence had a weight to it. I opened the refrigerator and placed the 2 large glass bowls of macaroni salad inside. They looked absurd, this huge quantity of food meant for a party that had rejected it. I closed the door. I picked up the phone to call my friend Marisol, but I put it down. I could not form words yet. I poured a glass of iced tea and sat at the kitchen table, the same table where Claire had done her homework, where we had painted ceramics, where we had planned her wedding. My mind began to travel backward, picking at threads. Lorraine. David's mother. A woman whose affection always seemed conditional, measured in gifts, with invisible strings attached. I remembered Claire's wedding 7 years ago. Lorraine had criticized the flower arrangements, found the chicken entree common, and had made a pointed comment about our side of the family being so casual. Claire had come to me that night stressed and tearful. "Why can't she just be nice, Mom, like you are?" I had smoothed her hair and told her to focus on David, that it was just one day. But then the more recent memories surfaced. Over the last 6 months, Claire's calls had become shorter, more rushed. Things are just crazy with the new house, Mom. David at our last dinner had talked incessantly about property taxes, homeowners association fees, the cost of keeping up appearances. He had mentioned almost offhandedly how generous his mother had been with the down payment. She really wants to feel connected to the place, he'd said. Claire had been quiet, pushing her food around her plate. A cold realization began to seep in. This was not a simple oversight. This was a calculation. I was the casualty of a new equation where Lorraine's financial contribution held more value than my 23 years of macaroni salad and sparklers. The thought was so mercenary it took my breath away. Later, in the dim light of my bedroom, I pulled an old shoebox from the closet. Inside were cards and drawings. I found one on construction paper faded, a stick figure with a big smile under a yellow sun. In a child's wobbly script it read, "To the best mom in the world. Love, Claire." I traced the crayon lines. The contrast between that cherished declaration and the closed door I faced today was a wound that felt fresh and deep. I turned off the light, deciding I would not be the one to break the silence first. The ringing was insistent, a harsh digital sound that shattered the fragile quiet of the next morning. I fumbled for my phone on the nightstand. The screen showed Claire's name, the time just after 7. A part of me, the hurt part, wanted to let it go to voicemail. But the mother part, the part conditioned over 3 decades, answered. "Mom." Her voice was a panicked squeak, punctuated by what sounded like a shout in the background. "Mom, you have to come right now. There's water everywhere. The basement is flooding. Everything is getting ruined." I sat up, my heart rate quickening, but my voice remained steady. "Take a breath, Claire. Where is the water coming from?" "I don't know, a pipe. I think in the utility sink. David's trying to stop it, but it's spraying. We can't find the thing to turn off the whole house." "The main water shut-off valve," I said, already swinging my legs out of bed. "Look for a lever or a wheel near your water heater or where the main line comes in. Check the inspection report." "We don't have it here. It's a digital file and David can't find it on his computer." She was crying now. "The plumber we called said he can't come for 3 hours. Please, Mom." I was pulling on a pair of old jeans and a t-shirt. "I'm on my way." I hung up. The phone rang again instantly. This time it was David. "Naomi," he said, his voice strained with apology and stress. "I am so sorry to bother you. It's a real mess here. We're in over our heads. My mom, Lorraine, is here. She's quite upset." As if to prove his point, I heard Lorraine's sharp tones in the background, though I couldn't make out the words. The sound alone was a twist of the knife. "I'm leaving now." I repeated, my tone flat. As I grabbed my keys and wallet, my mind clicked into a practical problem-solving mode. It was a familiar gear one I'd used for childhood stomach flus, flat tires, and broken hearts. I scrolled through my contacts as I walked to the car. I found the number for Ben, my former neighbor, a retired master plumber. He answered on the second ring. "Ben, it's Naomi. I need a favor. My daughter's place on Maple Crest, the new development, has a burst pipe. They can't find the main shutoff. Any chance you could meet me there with your tools? I'll pay you for your time, of course." Ben's raspy, calm voice was a balm. "Maple Crest. Sure, I know those units. The main valve's often in a tricky spot in those. Don't you worry about payment, Naomi. I'll be there in 20. You okay?" "I will be," I said, and the truth of that statement, vague as it was, felt solid. I drove faster than usual. The anger and hurt from the previous day had transformed into a cold, clear focus. When I pulled up to Claire's house, the scene was one of contained chaos. A thin stream of water was trickling from under the bulkhead doors of the walkout basement. David was on the porch, barefoot and wet, looking helpless. Claire stood in the doorway, her face pale and streaked with tears. And there was Lorraine, impeccable in tailored linen trousers and a silk blouse now dotted with water spots, her expression one of pure, furious disdain. She spotted me first. Finally, she exclaimed as if I were a tardy employee. "This is an absolute disaster! The drywall will be ruined." The flooring, I told David to buy a home warranty from a reputable company. I walked past her without a word. I went straight to Claire. "Show me." The basement was a shallow lake, maybe an inch deep, covering the entire finished floor. A utility sink in the corner was indeed the source, a pipe having given way at a joint spraying a steady arc of water. David stood nearby with a wrench, looking defeated. The air was thick with humidity and panic. Claire led me to the small mechanical room. We looked at the water heater, the furnace. No main valve. The inspection report mentioned something about an exterior access, I said, thinking aloud. I remembered because I had read the report when Claire was buying the place, wanting to understand what she was getting into for easier servicing in the winter. We went back upstairs and outside. I walked along the front of the house near the foundation. Then I saw it partially hidden by a newly planted azalea bush, a small round green plastic lid flush with the mulch. There, I said, pointing. Just then, Ben's familiar truck rumbled into the driveway. He got out a toolbox in hand and gave me a brief, kind nod. He sized up the situation in a glance. Exterior access, huh? Smart. Let's have a look. He lifted the lid, reached in, and with a single sure turn of a large valve, the spraying sound from inside the house stopped abruptly. The silence that followed was profound. The crisis was contained, but the mess remained. Lorraine began talking again, directing David to call his insurance company immediately and to demand a restoration crew. Claire just stood there shaking. I moved. I walked into the house to the laundry room. I knew where Claire kept her old towels, the ones not fit for guests. I pulled out a stack. I went to the kitchen, grabbed a roll of paper towels. I brought them to the top of the basement stairs. Claire. I said, my voice firm, not unkind, but devoid of its usual maternal warmth. It was the voice of a project manager. Take these towels. Start sopping up the water from the edges, work your way in. David, there's a wet-dry vacuum in your garage on the left-hand side. Bring it down. Use it to pull up the bulk of the water. They stared at me for a second, then jumped to obey. My clear instructions were a lifeline they desperately needed. Lorraine tried to step in. David, you need to document this with photos first for the claim. Don't just start mopping willy-nilly. I turned to her. My calm was a wall. Lorraine, I said evenly, the priority is to minimize the damage. The photos can be taken while we work. The best thing you can do right now is put the kettle on. Make some hot tea. Stress won't dry this floor any faster. She blinked, her mouth opening and then closing. For the first time, I saw a flicker of something other than imperiousness in her eyes, surprise and perhaps a hint of respect for my command of the situation. She turned and walked to the kitchen without another word. I worked alongside Claire and David for an hour, silently, efficiently. Ben checked the broken pipe, made a temporary fix, and gave David a list of parts to buy for a permanent repair. As I was moving a damp area rug, my eye caught a piece of thick cream-colored cardstock on the entryway table. It was a handwritten invitation. Please join us for a 4th of July celebration, it read in elegant script. Below it was addressed to the Miller family, Lorraine's family. No mention of Naomi. It was the physical proof of my exclusion sitting out in the open. Claire saw me looking at it. Her face crumpled and she looked away, shame flooding her features. When the basement was as dry as we could get it, Ben packed up. You're all set for now, he said. Get that part, and I can walk David through the fix tomorrow. I thanked him, pressing cash into his hand, which he reluctantly took. Lorraine, finding the atmosphere no longer to her liking, made a stiff excuse about a prior engagement and left shortly after. The door closed behind her, leaving the three of us standing in the damp, quiet aftermath. The silence was heavy, charged with everything left unsaid. The hum of the dehumidifier David had plugged in was the only sound. Claire was the one who broke first. A sob escaped her, then another, and she sank onto the bottom step of the staircase, her face in her hands. I'm so sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry. David stood with his shoulders slumped, staring at the wet patch on the floor. He finally looked at me, his eyes red-rimmed. It was my idea, Naomi. All of it. My mom. She helped so much with the down payment. She kept talking about how this was a fresh start, a new chapter for our family. She wanted the first big holiday here to be hers. I pressured Claire. I said it was just this once, that you would understand. His voice broke. I was wrong. I'm ashamed. Claire lifted her head, her expression raw. I was scared, Mom. Scared of the money, scared of disappointing David, scared of Lorraine making our lives miserable if we said no. I told myself you were strong, that you'd be okay, that you'd get over it faster than she would if we offended her. The words were a painful confession. It was cowardly. It was cruel. I listened. I let them speak. The initial icy focus had melted, leaving behind a deep, weary sorrow. I looked at my daughter, this woman I had raised, and I saw a stranger shaped by new pressures, and I also saw the little girl who drew me sons. The combination was heartbreaking. You chose a financial transaction over your own mother, I said, my voice quiet but clear in the damp room. You let me stand on your porch with my heart in my hands, holding the macaroni salad your grandfather loved, the recipe he taught me when I wasn't much older than you are now, and you treated me like a delivery person who had come to the wrong address. I paused, letting the image hang between us. Lorraine gives with strings. She buys presents. She buys preference. I have never given you anything with a string attached. Not my time, not my love, not my help painting your first apartment or watching you say I do. What I gave was freely given. And yesterday you showed me you don't understand the difference. I gestured to the room around us, but today, when there was a real crisis, not a social one, a tangible, damaging, stressful crisis, who did you call, who knew what to do, who showed up with the right person and the right knowledge? I didn't need to answer. The answer was in the now merely damp carpet in the silence where the spraying water had been. Claire nodded, crying openly now. I know. I see it. It's all I've been able to think about since you left yesterday. I felt sick. And then this happened and I needed my mom. The words were a plea. I will always be your mother, I said. The truth of it was an anchor. That is not a title that expires based on who writes the bigger check. It's forever. But being my daughter, that is a relationship, and it requires a loyalty of the heart. You need to figure out where yours lies, because yesterday it wasn't with me. I knew I could not stay. To accept a cup of tea to fall into the old rhythm of comfort and forgiveness would be too easy for them and a betrayal of my own pain. The most powerful thing I could do in that moment was to leave with my dignity intact, to show them that my presence was a gift, not a given. I need to go, I said, cutting off the stream of apologies that had begun again. They both looked stricken, but Mom Claire started. I need space, Claire. We all do. I picked up my purse. I walked to the kitchen counter and took a notepad and a pen from a drawer. I wrote down 2 things. First, Ben's full name and number, and below it the names and numbers of 2 other reputable plumbers and a water damage restoration company I knew from my years of homeownership. I tore off the sheet. For next time, I said, handing it to David. It wasn't a gift of sentiment. It was a transfer of practical responsibility. Then I turned to Claire. I looked into her swollen red eyes. I am your mother. That will never change. But being my daughter requires a loyalty of the heart. You need to figure out where yours lies. I repeated it, letting the words settle. Take the time to figure it out. I did not hug her goodbye. I simply nodded, turned, and walked out the door. The morning sun was high now, warm on my face. The drive home felt different. The hollowness from the night before was gone. In its place was a solid, heavy fatigue, but also a strange, quiet clarity. I had done what needed to be done. I had held the line. Back home, I went straight to the refrigerator. I opened it and looked at the 2 large bowls of macaroni salad. I took them both out. I did not throw them away. That felt like an admission of defeat of waste. Instead, I picked up the phone and called Marisol. Hey, it's me. Are you home? I'm coming over. I have a story to tell you and an absurd amount of pasta salad. 30 minutes later, I was sitting at Marisol's cozy kitchen table, the bowl between us. I told her everything from the porch to the flood to the words exchanged in the damp basement. She listened, her face a mirror of empathy and rising anger on my behalf. That little witch, she muttered about Lorraine, and oh honey, she sighed about Claire. She didn't offer platitudes. She just let me talk and served us both generous helpings of the salad. It's really good, she said after a bite. It's my dad's recipe, I said. And for the first time, I smiled a little. Later, back at my own house, I took the second bowl of fork and a glass of iced tea out to my porch. I sat in my favorite Adirondack chair, the one that faced the small garden I tended. I ate the macaroni salad alone. I tasted the sharpness of the pickle relish, the creaminess of the dressing, the perfect bite of the elbow macaroni. I had made it with love for a celebration. Now I was consuming it as fuel, as an act of reclaiming something for myself. I watched the fireflies begin their evening dance as the sky turned peach, then lavender. I was alone, but for the first time in 24 hours, I did not feel lonely. I felt present in my own life. The following weeks were a study in the quiet strength of boundaries. I did not call Claire. When she called me, which she did every other day at first, I answered. I was polite. Hello, Claire. I let her carry the conversation. I offered brief updates about my garden, my new pottery class. I deflected her repeated invitations to come for dinner to talk things through. I'm not ready for that yet, I would say calmly. I'm glad things are settling down for you there. The distance in my voice, the deliberate lack of the old, easy warmth was its own message. She could hear it, and it pained her, which pained me, but I held firm. I poured energy into the pottery class at the community center. My first attempts were lopsided and clumsy, but there was a profound satisfaction in getting my hands into cool, wet clay and focusing entirely on centering it on the wheel. I met 2 women there, Annette and Grace. We were all beginners, all finding a creative outlet later in life. We laughed at our failures and cheered our modest successes. We went for coffee after class. It was a new, gentle connection unburdened by history or expectation. Claire tried to bridge the gap with gestures. Flowers arrived, a long, rambling email, a heartfelt card. They were tokens of guilt, and while I acknowledged them with a simple, "Thank you, they're lovely," they did not move the needle. What needed to shift was not on the surface. Then, on a rainy Thursday afternoon, my doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. I opened the door to find Claire standing there without David, without an umbrella getting drizzled on. She held no flowers, no gift bag, just a sealed envelope in her hand. Her eyes were anxious. "Can I come in?" she asked, her voice small. I stepped aside. She stood in my foyer, dripping slightly. She handed me the envelope. I wrote this. I needed you to read it, not just hear it. I took it and led her to the living room. I sat in my armchair. She perched on the edge of the sofa. I opened the envelope. The letter was several pages long, handwritten on plain paper. The words were messy, honest, and raw. She detailed her fear of financial instability, her desire to please David, her intimidation by Lorraine's forceful personality. She called herself weak and a coward. She said the sight of me walking away from her porch had replayed in her mind 1,000 times, each time filling her with more shame. She wrote about the flood, about watching me take charge. You were my rock, and I had just thrown you away. I saw the difference between the mother who builds you up and the one who buys her way in. Then came the crucial part. She and David had sat down with Lorraine. They had thanked her for the down payment help, but told her they would be refinancing to pay her back in full over time with a formal loan agreement. We told her our family holidays would include you or they wouldn't include her, that we would not exclude one mother to please another. Lorraine had been furious, of course. But Claire wrote, "For the first time, I didn't care about her anger. I only cared about the look in your eyes on my porch. I never want to be the reason for that look again." I finished the letter. I looked at my daughter, who was watching me, her hands clenched in her lap. The words felt true. They felt like the beginning of a reckoning, not just an apology. She had taken concrete action, not just offered sentiment. "This is a start, Claire," I said finally, my voice softer than it had been in weeks. "A real start." She let out a shuddering breath. "Does that mean... Can we start over?" "We can't start over," I said. "We can only go forward from here, and going forward means things will be different." She nodded, accepting the terms. We talked a little more that day about practical things, about her job, about my pottery. It was stilted, but it was a conversation. The dam had cracked, allowing a trickle of possibility through. The invitation for Thanksgiving came in early November. It was a proper card addressed solely to me. Inside, in Claire's neat handwriting, it read, "Mom, we would be honored if you would join us for Thanksgiving dinner. Just us. A fresh start at our table. Love, Claire and David." A postscript added Lorraine is hosting at her club this year. The clarity of it, the intentionality, meant more than any extravagant gesture. I accepted. The dinner was simple. Claire cooked, really cooked, following recipes we had used for years. She called me twice for advice on the gravy. The table was set with the linens I had brought as my rejected 4th of July gift. David carved the turkey. We talked not about the past, not in a heavy way, but about the present. My pottery class, David's work, their plans to plant a garden in the spring. The conversation was slow, sometimes halting, but it was honest. There was no performance, no audience. It was just us rebuilding something piece by piece. Driving home that night under a sky scattered with cold, bright stars, I felt a profound sense of peace. The betrayal had been a searing fire, but it had burned away illusions. It had taught me about my own strength, the kind that isn't loud, but is deeply rooted. I had learned the freedom that comes from refusing to be an option. The freedom to love my daughter without needing to be at the center of her world. The freedom to say this hurt me and to step back without drama. And the ultimate freedom to define my own worth independent of anyone else's invitation. My relationship with Claire is different now. It is quieter, more thoughtful. It may never have the untroubled ease of before, but perhaps that ease was partly an illusion, a taking for granted. What we have now is built on a harder truth, and in its own way, it is more real. It is a relationship between two adults who have seen each other's flaws and are choosing to move forward with clearer eyes. I sit on my porch now, the same porch from that summer night, and the silence is not empty. It is full of my own thoughts, my own contentment. I tend my garden. I mess with my clay. I see my friends, and I realize that sometimes the most important invitation you will ever receive is the one you write for yourself to find your own worth and to finally peacefully come home to it. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever had to rebuild a bridge you thought was solid, I'd love to hear about it in the comments below. Your experiences are what make this community real. If you found strength in Naomi's journey, please give this video a like. It helps others find these stories. And if you want to join us for more conversations about family healing and finding your voice later in life, hit that subscribe button and share this with someone who might need to hear it today. Thank you for listening, for being here, and for sharing your time with me. However you're celebrating your own holidays this year, I wish you peace and the quiet strength of your own company.